We are at MxU HQ today talking about how to get wedge monitors sounding great in your church. We have a band coming. We're gonna get this whole thing going. Luckily, I think we're just gonna set up one because I frankly just think it would be mean to make everybody use wedges in this room. But let's get this thing set up. We'll talk about application, why we might use it in certain environments in the church, and how to make them sound great. So let's do it. I think we have a wedge actually in here. That was not planted by anybody. It's just always there because we use them all the time, obviously. Really not all that heavy either. Made by Yamaha. I don't know what size the cone is. We'll get to that too. Caleb's gonna be here soon. He'll tell you all that important stuff, but let's get it plugged in and see what happens. Looking all good. We are gonna address that here very soon.
So today we're talking about using wedges in your church. Wedges can still be a really great tool, even if we don't see them super often now. A lot of times we use in-ear monitors, but there's some really practical ways that we can utilize wedges to serve that same purpose of monitoring. Things like large deployments, like choirs. You need to be able to get monitoring to a ton of different people. Wedges do that really well and on a low budget. That's another thing. Wedges, sometimes they cost less than providing everybody with in-ears. But there's also some drawbacks, like we run into things like feedback and bleed and the constant battle between the volume at front of house and the volume coming from stage. So if you utilize wedges, or maybe you're looking into utilizing wedges, stick around and we'll walk through everything from configuration to how we process them, how we build a mix on them to get great results on Sunday morning. All right, so we're here on stage right in front of my wedge. Let's just talk about a couple different variables with our wedge here. Number one is active versus passive. This is a active speaker. Basically, it just means that the amplifier is built in to the speaker and it's all contained in one unit. So we've got a power cable right here and an XLR coming from our console. So this is all one contained unit. With a passive wedge, you would have a speaker, and then you would have an amplifier maybe in a rack somewhere, and the XLR coming from your console would go into the amplifier, and then the amplifier would feed the wedge. Active wedges are great because, you know, like I said, it's all self-contained. You can just run the cable straight to the stage. You don't have to worry about, you know, amps in another room, things like that. But there are some benefits to passive speakers, maybe some audio quality improvements. But still, we can get great results with the active speaker that we have here. So we've talked about the type of speaker that we have here. We've got an active one. Another big thing that we have to take into account is the placement of the wedge to get good results. We've got a mic on a stand here that our worship leader is using, and this wedge is purposely placed behind the microphone. So we don't have our wedge in front of the microphone, and the reasoning for this is this microphone is actually, this one's actually a hypercardioid, so it means it has a very tight pickup pattern, and so the firing zone of the wedge is in the null of the microphone, meaning that this wedge is firing where this microphone picks up the least. So that helps us with bleed. We still do get some bleed, but we're trying to minimize that as much as we can. Like I said, polar pattern, that's a really big thing that you have to take into account. When you're using wedges, honestly, you probably want the tightest polar pattern possible. You may hear of cardioid mic, supercardioid, hypercardioid, omni even. Omni means that it's gonna pick up from all directions. We definitely don't want that because that is feedback central here with our wedge. So by picking a polar pattern like supercardioid, hypercardioid that's really tight, it rejects a lot from the sides, it's gonna minimize the amount of feedback that we have. Also, condenser versus dynamic. This is a condenser mic and it's been doing okay for us in weeks past. But if you're still having problems, maybe you choose a dynamic mic. They're a little bit less sensitive than the condenser ones. So just some things to take into account to set us up well, making sure that we've got the right microphone, polar pattern, type of mic is going to kind of lay the foundations for making sure we get good results whenever we start service. So one of the biggest ways that we find success with using wedges is actually what we call ringing out wedges. And what this means is we are feeding our wedge from an aux on our console. We're gonna EQ that aux, not the microphone, we're gonna EQ the aux. And basically what we're searching for is problematic frequencies that are causing feedback in our wedge. So I'm gonna start with my vocal mic. And basically, I'm just going to exaggerate the volume of the vocal mic in the wedge, and I'm gonna try to get it to feedback. And then on my wedge mix here, I've got bus 1, that's my wedge. I've got my EQ enabled, and I'm just gonna search for those problematic frequencies. So I've got my vocal mic here, it is on currently. I'm just gonna turn it up a lot. And you can actually use your RTA as a tool to find these frequencies. So it looks like that first problematic frequency is around 6K. I'm gonna use my high 2 band here, that guy right there, yep. And I'm just gonna cut it. I'm gonna keep pushing. Looks like the next one that's coming up is about 10K. That's on a shelf right now. I'm gonna put it on a bell curve. That guy, dog whistle. Okay, we've got another one around 1K. There it is. So you can see this RTA is a super great tool to ring out these wedges. And I might just take, that one is pretty close to that first cut that I did, so I might just like widen this Q a little bit. Do the same thing for the high. And try to push a little bit more. Looks like there's some stuff down here at around 400. Getting close. That 4K stuff keeps coming back. I'm gonna take some of that out more, widen it up. Maybe just to be safe, take some of that some of those super highs out. Man, it really does not like those frequencies. So it's really just this game that you have to play with EQing your wedges so that you're finding those problematic frequencies and you're cutting them now so that, whenever you get into rehearsal and your vocalist is like, hey, I just can't hear myself, and you keep turning the vocal mic up louder and louder, there's nothing worse than when it starts feeding back and you're hurting the worship leader's ears. So we're doing our best now to try to find those problematic frequencies so that whenever we go to start building the mix in the wedge, we don't have any problems, or we have minimal problems. And again, I'm making these EQs on the wedge, so it's not affecting the actual vocal channel strip. I'm just doing it on the wedge so that it only affects that speaker. And the reason we're doing the vocal mic to try to make this feedback is because that's probably gonna be the most susceptible input in our chain to feedback in the wedge, because it's honestly the closest one. And so, by doing this work on the front end, it really lays the foundation so that when we get started in rehearsal, we don't have any feedback problems. So I'm feeling pretty good with this. It doesn't look like our mic is feeding back anymore. So we're gonna bring the band in, get everybody set up, and get started with Soundcheck.
All right, I think Caleb has solved all the wedge drama. Hopefully you have a better understanding of why we still use wedges and how we can keep them from being disastrous. You'll notice we only have one wedge. I am the lucky guy today getting to use the wedge, and the whole band is gonna stay on in-ears. Honestly, just because we felt like it'd be mean to make them all use wedges in this pretty unforgiving room, honestly. If you've been to MxU HQ, you would know a bit of a live room back here. So, all that to say, we're gonna get rolling. I think Caleb is gonna get gain structure set for all the inputs, and then we'll go about getting this mix dialed and usable for worship setting. Here we go.
All right, so we're gonna start with getting all of our gains set. Basically, this is just making sure that our show file works as it should. Basically, whenever you set your show file up, if you set everything to the same gain level, then every week when you come back, you again set that to the same gains, let's say -18, and then our show file reacts how it should. So our compressors are hitting at the right spot, our gates are hitting at the right spot, and it just makes so that we don't have to remake our file every week. So I'm gonna do that and just go through everybody and get our gains set. We don't have we have the wedges set, but we don't have anything going to them right now, except I'm gonna put in my talkback mic so everybody can hear me. But this just makes it so that whenever we're setting gains, this is a vulnerable time for feedback, and I don't wanna hurt our equipment. I don't wanna hurt our people on stage. So we'll get gains set and then we'll put our wedge mix together. So Nate, will you get us started off with kick? Great. Snare. Tom 1. Tom 2. And then the full kit. Great. Thank you, sir. Josh. Awesome. Blake. Killer. Thank you, sir. Justin. Great. Spencer, can you play your guitar for me and then I'll get your vocal? And your voice?
Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me.
Great, thank you. All right, so I've got all of my gain set here. Like I said, I'm trying to set them all to the same level. So on my console, I have -18 here. So I'm aiming that the average signal would hit -18. It's okay if it goes a little bit over, a little bit under, but generally trying to get it at that consistent level. So now that we have our gain set, I think we're ready to start making some noise and getting a mix put together.
Yeah, and I would note really quick too, just because the wedges were off during setting those gains, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to start from 0 every time. Just make sure they're muted. You could set that up with a mute group, like just any live wedges on stage, mute them with a mute group while you're getting gain set. Or, there are a few different ways to do that, but ultimately, like Caleb said, you want to keep from feedback happening through those wedges while gains are set. But it doesn't mean you need to start from 0 every time with a mix. So now is a good time where you could unmute that wedge while the band goes through the first song, as the gains are probably in a pretty close range while Caleb is dialing in those gains through kind of the first run of the chorus. So keep that in mind, but let's hit the first or the second chorus or so, and we'll see where things are at.
Yeah.
Amazing. So in this time, normally everybody would send in their mix changes, and we'd usually start through drums, bass, guitar, keys. For the sake of example, we already dialed in the band's mix pretty good, right? So now we're just dealing with the wedge. But let's talk about, what do we actually want in a wedge? Obviously, for me as the worship leader in this instance, I want to have my own vocal in the wedge pretty good so I can hear myself singing. I also want to have whatever instrument I'm playing. In this case, it's acoustic guitar. But that's not it. There's still a lot more that you would want in a wedge. And something that a lot of people don't necessarily consider in their wedge is like kick drum. Kick drum, snare drum are two really common things actually you would want to have in your wedge. Because again, I can hear those things open air, but after you start to get everything in your wedge, there's a lot happening, and you want to make sure you have rhythmic instruments in your wedge so that you're staying in time. Another thing, bass guitar. You're going to want to have, again, almost pretty much every aspect of the band. Where we want to be careful, certain inputs that shouldn't go in the wedge, like click, probably don't want to put click in the wedge. Probably don't want to put in like your MD's mic in the wedge, things that you wouldn't want everybody in the congregation hearing or that would compete with your front of house mix. You want to leave those out. So probably you're not going to have crowd mics, those types of things that you would have in an in-ear mix. We're going to leave out of the wedge in this instance. So in this case, Caleb, I would love some kick and snare in my mix a little bit more. I think I heard bass pretty good, but keys, guitar a little bit more. Check, hey, I think, well, I don't have it in my, yeah, here's my voice. Overall, my voice felt pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more if you can. It seems like there's maybe a little more room in there for it. My guitar is pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more guitar. We'll see if it'll feed back, but. Justin, can you play keys for me really quick? Yeah, that's great. Let's run through the chorus again. I might shout a few changes your way. And for the sake of example here, what you're hearing is the crowd mics with the aux send that is feeding my wedge. So you can kind of hear a blend. It's not perfect, again, for you to, how do we replicate you being in this room, but you'll kind of hear what I'm hearing in the room in combination with what is coming at me from the wedge. So let's run through the chorus again here.
All right, great job, guys. Y'all are sounding great. As y'all can hear, the wedge mix isn't super polished. It's not super pretty, but it's serving as a really nice utility. And kind of the thinking behind putting this together is that we're kind of supplementing what we're hearing in our environment. So, you know, obviously, like Spencer said earlier, we're putting in some kick and some snare just to kind of reinforce that. But if you look at our console here, we've got no overheads. So, you know, Nate is playing drums, he's smashing those cymbals, he's super close to Spencer. So we don't need to give him more cymbal mics in his ears. Another thing to take into account too is if you've got guitar amps, like a bass amp or like real guitar amps on stage, you may not need to send a ton of guitar and bass to your wedge because you're already hearing that acoustically in the room. In this case, our Josh and Blake are going direct, so we're giving quite a bit of bass and guitar in the wedge. And just kind of, as you're building your mix, think of those things like, am I already hearing it in the room? Okay, if I am, maybe I just supplement it a little bit. But we also have to think, you know, we only have so much space, sonic space to put into our wedge. So we want to choose wisely what we need and what we hear acoustically. So we've got tons of resources. Maybe if there are some things that are a little bit unclear to you still, everything from like what is a wedge to, you know, setting up the aux on your console for your wedges, mixing in-ears, all kinds of really great tools that can help you on putting on your services for Sunday morning. So here at MxU, if you're new around here and you don't know exactly what we do, we are the leading training platform for worship and tech teams, and we do it in 3 main ways. We've got a library of over 1,000 videos. All of those live in our learning management system that is custom built by us for you, for church, worship, and tech teams. And then we've also got one-on-one coaching to help supplement that too. So we realize that not every problem you're having is universal and you need specific answers. So you can hop on a call with one of our coaches here at MxU to help address your needs. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you in the next video.